What if I told you that an empire's fate, its wealth, its wars, its colonies spanning oceans, rested on the fragile body of a single king? A king whose face bore the marks of centuries of intermarriage, whose body betrayed him, whose very bloodline was poisoned by the ambitions of his ancestors. This is not a tale of battlefields or heroic conquest. This is the story of Charles II of Spain, the last of the Spanish Habsburgs, a man called El Hechizado, the Bewitched, a king whose body was a battlefield between life and death, a dynasty collapsing under the weight of its own obsession with keeping power locked within the family. Tonight, we step into a world of scandalous genetics, whispered curses, and royal secrets, a story where family, politics, and fate intertwine in ways more tragic than any playwright could invent. The Spanish Empire in the 17th century was vast, stretching across Europe, the Americas, Africa, and Asia. Silver flowed from the mines of Potosi. Galleons crossed the Atlantic, laden with treasure, and the name of Spain carried power and fear. Yet behind the glittering facade, Spain was crumbling, exhausted by wars, drained of wealth, weakened by corruption, and at the center of it all stood one child. Charles was born in Madrid on November 6th, 1661, the son of King Philip IV of Spain and Mariana of Austria. From the moment of his birth, the court whispered, he was sickly, weak, misshapen. His tongue was so large he could hardly speak. His jaw jutted forward, grotesquely, a deformity so pronounced that he could not chew his food properly. His body was frail, his legs thin, his growth stunted. The physicians argued, was he cursed? Was it witchcraft? Or was it something far darker, the result of generations of Habsburg inbreeding? For centuries, the Habsburg dynasty had married within itself, uncles to nieces, cousins to cousins, in a desperate attempt to keep their power and territories from slipping away. The Habsburg jaw, that jutting chin, had become infamous across Europe. But in Charles II, the accumulated damage reached its tragic peak. His family tree was not a tree at all, but a twisted knot. His father, Philip IV, had married his own niece. His grandmother was also his aunt. His great-grandfather was also his great-uncle. Geneticists today have traced his pedigree and found shocking results. More than a quarter of his genes were identical by descent. Inbreeding had hollowed him from within, and yet this fragile child was heir to the Spanish Empire. From infancy, Charles was seen as bewitched. Priests whispered prayers over his cradle. Relics of saints were laid beside him. Exorcisms were performed in secret. His health wavered constantly. Fevers, seizures, weakness that left him bedridden for months. His very survival seemed a miracle, though a cruel one. At court, factions formed around him. His mother, Queen Mariana, served as regent through his childhood, wielding power while her son drifted between illness and frailty. Foreign ambassadors reported home in disbelief at the state of the Spanish heir. Some said he could barely walk. Others claimed he could not speak until he was 4 or even 5. But despite his weaknesses, Charles was king, and kings were expected to secure heirs. In 1679, at the age of 18, Charles married Marie-Louise of Orléans, the beautiful niece of Louis XIV of France. She was radiant, full of youth, and Charles, stunted, frail, desperate, adored her. But their marriage brought no children. Rumors spread like wildfire. Was the king impotent? Was he cursed? Marie Louise herself wrote letters describing her misery. She confessed her sorrow that she could not give Spain an heir. Some whispered she was poisoned. In 1689, she died suddenly at just 26. Poison, the court insisted. But perhaps it was only grief. Charles married again, this time to Maria Anna of Neuburg, a German princess chosen for her family's fertility. Her sisters had borne dozens of children between them. If anyone could give Spain an heir, it was she. But again, no children came. Whispers turned into roars. Pamphlets called Charles El Hechizado, cursed, bewitched. Exorcisms multiplied. Priests recited prayers of deliverance over him. His body, racked with illness, grew ever weaker. His hair fell out, his skin turned gray, his body wasted away. And still, Spain waited for an heir who would never come. But Charles's story is not only one of physical suffering, it is also a tale of politics, of nations circling like vultures around a dying empire. France, under the Sun King Louis XIV, watched eagerly. Austria, home of the other Habsburg branch, positioned itself for inheritance. Every court in Europe schemed, waiting for the moment when Charles would die and leave no heir, and the vast Spanish Empire would be divided like spoils of war. Charles himself knew it. He became obsessed with omens, with signs of witchcraft, with saints and relics. He spent hours in prayer, haunted by the knowledge that his body was failing and that the fate of Spain rested on him alone. By the final years of his reign, Charles was a shadow of a man. He could not walk without assistance. He could not eat without choking. His speech slurred. His body was covered in sores. And yet, his spirit lingered. He issued decrees, attended councils, prayed fervently. He clung to the hope of a miracle. It never came. On November 1st, 1700, Charles II of Spain died at the age of 38. He had no children, no heir. With his death, the Spanish Habsburg line ended, and with it began one of the bloodiest wars Europe had ever seen, the War of the Spanish Succession. The autopsy revealed a body ravaged beyond belief. His heart was said to be the size of a peppercorn. His intestines were rotten, his lungs corroded. His testicles, the doctors whispered, were shriveled and black. He had no blood. One physician recorded only a pale, watery fluid. The legend of Charles II, the bewitched king, lived on. Was he the victim of sorcery, as his contemporaries believed, or of genetics, as we now understand? The truth is crueler than either. He was the tragic end of a dynasty that had turned in on itself, blinded by power, bound by pride. The Spanish Empire, that once stretched across the world, now stood at the mercy of foreign powers, and all because one man, a man born of centuries of incest, of politics masquerading as love, could not leave an heir. Today, Charles II of Spain is remembered less for what he did than for what he represented: the limits of royal ambition, the dangers of blood kept too pure, the fragility of empires built on sand. His story is not only one of a king, but of a family consumed by itself, a dynasty undone by its own obsession with bloodlines, the bewitched king, the last of the Habsburgs, the cursed child who carried the weight of an empire on his broken body. And as we look back, centuries later, we cannot help but wonder, was it fate, was it folly, or was it, in truth, both? If you were captivated by this tale, join us again tomorrow Every day, we uncover the scandals, secrets, and tragedies hidden in history's darkest corners. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because the next story will leave you just as spellbound.